Welcome to another episode of Feed the Trolls. I have been wanting to do this particular topic since January this year, and for various reasons, we've been putting it off. Vilga is joining us today. We're going to be talking about women's Counter-Strike. We're going to be talking about the VRS system. We're going to be talking about Imperial Valkyries. And I had such an incredible introduction lined up, but Thorin mentioned he wanted to say something, so I've just thrown it all out of the window and I'm handing it over to him. Look at me sharing.
You can still do it just after this. What I thought I would say at the outset is this. One, I actually think most of these topics are absolute trash to discuss on the internet because people already are tribal and they're just ready to be against each other, etc. Whereas I've actually found, maybe you can watch my reflections with Miss Harvey to see this, the actual best way you can find common ground is you actually have to let people talk about their experiences and what how things are from their perspective. And if you see the world through their eyes, you might actually realize there's a different angle that you haven't seen before. So what I'm going to do in this conversation is I actually know there will be some men who will come and watch this episode and they will actually hope they can find some angle where Vilga says something they think doesn't make sense or she's being rude or entitled or something, and they will use that as an excuse to just dismiss all the rest. So I'm actually going to be, in a rare case, very charitable with how I interpret everything said in this episode. But she does also like to talk shit on the internet, and I'll tell you what, that's right up my wheelhouse. So I'm your Huckleberry if you want to do that too. So you choose which way this goes.
So I mean, exciting. Vilga, I've worked with you. Vilga does like to talk shit, but also what I love about this is both of you are willing to come on and have this conversation because Vilga, you have strong opinions. But I think what Thorin mentioned there is really important. You are actually willing to listen to someone else's opinion and see what they have to say, and that's possibly something that is lacking sometimes from these conversations online. Do you think?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I can call myself a very rational person, right? And I'm very open-minded. And sometimes when I talk trash, I understand the consequences, right? And then, for example, the trash that Thorin is talking about, it gained interactions exactly, right? Exactly what I wanted to achieve. And I mean, it was pretty funny. I wasn't mad or anything. For me, it was more like a banter.
Okay. Yeah, all good.
A little bit of banter. There was a tweet, obviously, that went out, and we'll get into that. But let's start this conversation. So here's what happens, right? Is Imperial Valkyries, it gets announced that they're going to get to go to Blast. They've obviously moved their way up on this new Valve ranking system at the beginning of Jan. And this is when I wanted to talk about it because the moment it got announced that they had been invited, chaos on the internet. What we do on this show is we always find a topic that everyone is talking about on HLTV or Reddit or X. And this topic has been going on, but the conversation has changed so much time and time again. And at the start of this, I'm going to be dead honest. The moment that it was announced that they had got the invite, excuse my language, but the first thing I thought is, oh, shit. And the reason I thought that was because I was like, one, I can admit I can support women's Counter-Strike, but I can also say that the Valve ranking system is deeply flawed. And I was well aware that this team was now going to have to go up against teams that are at a far higher skill level. And as a woman, it's pretty easy. I know what's going to happen is these women now represent all of us. They are all women who play Counter-Strike. And if they stuff up, we all suck and are terrible and should go back to the kitchen. That's a lot of pressure. So that was my first thoughts. But I'm curious, Vilga, when you heard they'd been invited, what were your thoughts?
Well, pretty much the same as your thoughts, to be honest. Because, right, they're the best team in the world. Everyone knows it. And if I was, right, the team who got an invitation to, Tier 1 tournament, I would call myself lucky, right? Because, like you said, it's a big flaw in the system of Valve ranking, right, that allowed to put the team that earned the high prize money in the completely different tournament, right, in the Women's Counter-Strike, to participate in the Tier 1 tournaments. And obviously, it's very lucky for them, right? But I still think that, we need this kind of opportunities for the female scene, just not through the ranking, right? Through the common ranking, but, let's say how it was before, right? The best team of the tournament gets invited to, lower tier tournament, not Tier 1, right? But, something like ESL Challenger, for example. I think this would be really fair, but not like it is now.
Okay. By the way, I
So-
will clarify,
yeah.
we did get it wrong technically on past episodes, which is I actually just assumed this was Valve just not knowing the esports scene, and they built a ranking and they
Yeah.
just didn't know, for example, that there was a lot of prize money in the female circuit.
Yeah.
So they didn't even think of it. I actually did go and check. If you go onto the GitHub and you check the exact stipulations of the ranking, they
Yeah.
actually did plan for this. It does say you're allowed to make tournaments that are either gender locked or region locked. So that actually implies Valve has a different perspective. Their logic here is this. Even though I agree, the weird thing about qualifying to like Blast or Katowice is you do it through a tournament that doesn't, none of those teams play against the male teams. They're treating it as if it was like a different region, basically. So the logic Valve are using is, imagine the Chinese scene, which used to be really, really big actually in CSGO and have loads of tournaments and prize money. Their logic would be, back in the day, everyone remembers Ty Lue just used to dominate that and used to win like hundreds of thousands of dollars of prize money. So their logic is, that means that like the best team of that scene should get a chance to compete here. But I actually agree with what she said at the end there. There's actually a middle ground that everyone's missed, which is you don't have to just throw them into IEM Katowice. If you don't know, guys, people like Furia failed in the play-ins. They're like, it's actually really hard to get through the play-ins. There's some killer teams in there.
Yeah.
The actual more reasonable thing would be go between the two levels, go to like the ESL Challenger level. Because if you remember, in past seasons, ESL Challenger sometimes actually has like one really good team, like a couple of like 12 to 15 teams. Then the other teams are at least ones at like top 30. That would actually be an appropriate level where, put it this way, in that level, they could already have won maps. They might even have upset a team even. And by the way, as you say, Sam, that would have done so much more for this whole discussion, because this is going to be treated by people who want to just be like, all women suck at everything.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
like, oh, if you lose, right, well, it's proved it, right? Get them out, get them all out of the scene, which is not at all what everyone wants, especially if you want both. I also think as well, it would actually give extra value to ESL Impact. Now, like, you're not just competing for the prize money and the titles there. You get your chance to go into this like bridge to the male scene. I think that would also be a really cool sort of like dynamic for people to aspire to in the Impact scene.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with this, right? Because like you can't really like, right? Like if we see the levels of women Counter-Strike, right, and compare it to the male Counter-Strike, it's like this. Like it's like this, literally tier 1, and the best female team is here. And then like we need the steps, right? Like for example, what ECA suggesting, right? Like there's ECA open, intermediate, May, advanced, right? And then like you just go step by step higher and higher. And this is exactly like what we need, what the women's scene need. We need something like higher than women tournaments that can challenge us, that can improve us, right? Because like you cannot improve playing like the same circuit. You need something better and something stronger, right? And that's the reason as well why so many women's teams, they participate in ECA, because they're being challenged and they can see like their level of Counter-Strike. But like jumping into tier 1 tournaments playing against Navi, even though Imperial showed such a good result, right? Like they played really good Ancient, they played really good Mirage against Furia, but you cannot imagine the pressure that the girls have to fight. Like it's insane, the pressure, because like even when I'm playing some qualifications, so like CCT, right, or Yala, I have the pressure because like I want to prove that I can compete. I want to prove that I'm the best. I want to prove like to all these haters and toxic people that the women's CS is valid, and we can play the game. We know how to play the game. But because of this whole pressure, I put personally on myself. I start overthinking. I perform worse, and I cannot imagine what the girls had to go through playing on such like on big event and on LAN. Right? And LAN and online is so different, right? It's already hard to play online tournaments against good teams, but then imagine like LAN environment, and then everyone is putting this pressure on them. Like I have big respect to the girls that they went through it and they showed good result. And I guess like the more opportunities, not like this, right, but what we just talked about with like lower tier but still better than us, would improve the scene.
By the way, I've got another suggestion. It's what I said online. The other angle is, because this is why I actually think most female versus male topics, it's just easier to make it so people don't do like the political thing. Just make it like regions within men's Counter-Strike. So an obvious example would be, everyone complained at the end of CSGO, like NACS is dead for North America. So what people said was, right, what we need to do is have like cops that are just for NA teams. No one ever complained about that. No one was like, what the hell? You're just excluding all the Europeans. Everyone understood you need that for their region. region to have support and
Exactly.
be able to compete. So I'll give you the obvious example you could also do, if not ESL Challenger. Pro League is giant. We all know they have 1 million teams in ESL Pro League, and it's way lower stakes in the group stage. It's obviously like, I mean, it's going to now potentially have some sort of audience, but in the past it used to be in Malta where the joke was there was like 3 fucking people working the cameras in the audience and a cat. That was like the audience in the playoffs. So the pressure's way lower. That's why no one ever that's why no one ever hyped people. So what I would say is this: if people don't know, Pro League in past seasons used to actually have a regional spot. There was actually one for Spanish region, believe it or not. So that meant whether a Spanish team was actually top 30 or not, whoever won the Spanish qualifier automatically got to go to Pro League. You could also literally just do that. Forget the rankings. You could just have a spot. Valve could say this is possible. It could just be number 1 women's team gets a spot to, like Pro League, we play loads of games in the group stage.
Exactly.
There's low pressure. And then also then similarly, then whoever wins the next Impact or whether they get the spot or something, I think that's another way you can solve it. Because then also, then people, I think the last thing to say about the invite thing is that word invite is so dangerous, because the old version of invite, back in the day, it was you literally invited whoever you wanted, Sam. Like if you really wanted to invite someone for viewership, it wasn't good. You could invite them, you could invite you could actually skip over a good team even. They think invite in the modern day, fans who haven't look, who the fuck's going to go on that GitHub? It's like for things like nerds and programmers, and it's all in text. There's no graphics. No one's going to go and read that. It's really boring. Like that's why I let like Messi also do it for me, and then I just go, oh, okay, mate, cheers. So when you go and read that, right? The problem people are having is they're thinking invite means ESL sat down and went, right, I'm going to choose who comes to this event. Whereas if you actually look how VRS works, you don't have a choice. The whole point of VRS is Valve set this system, and when you make an event, you actually are obliged to invite the top X amount. And the whole reason why this team actually got invited was they were within that ranking. They were like just 2 above or something. And so it's actually why there was a similar thing, if people don't know, where I think for Cluj, off the top of my head, I think it was Furia Female that had the spot initially, but then they couldn't attend or something. And that's how. So again, no one's like inviting them. So it's not actually like ESL's even setting them up like, hey, we're inviting this team and saying they're awesome. But I think the word tricked people. The word invite makes it sound like we're setting them up. And then that draws in all these stupid political things of like, does that mean they're saying they're as good and they should come? And who wants to even get into all that? That's not even what we're really talking about here.
Yeah. I mean, I agree.
So I just want to quickly, one of the things I didn't point out is if you don't know who Vilga is and you're watching this for the first time, she actually, the Imperial Valkyries team that you see now, she actually founded as Enigma Galaxy. She found all those pro players. She's been playing Counter-Strike for years. She brought them all together, kind of went on that winning streak and is
Won
now
a bunch
moved
of
to
impacts,
NIP.
right? Yeah.
I think she pretty much won every Impact she was in when she was with Valkyries. So she has a lot of experience in the scene, but there's so many things I want to ask. But Thorin, I want to touch on what you mentioned there, where I do think that the term invite was misunderstood, because I saw a lot of people get very angry online when there was commentary that, hey, actually, Valkyries is not at the level they need to be to play in these tournaments. And a lot of people from like other esports came in and were like getting super angry, saying the women deserve a chance. And I think that it was because they didn't understand how the rankings actually worked. They didn't realize that they were playing in a closed circuit event that other teams couldn't play in. And because it was on LAN and the prize money was X amount, it allowed them to jump up the rankings. So there was like this lack of understanding. But what I thought was super interesting was how many people jumped on that who knew nothing about Counter-Strike because they needed to have a comment.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a great example. I posted on X after we saw them at Blast. I said, people don't understand the amount of stress that this team probably had on their shoulders, how there's like this weird obsession with basically saying, well, all you now represents all women. I got so many replies from people telling me, other men, saying I wasn't allowed to have this opinion and I wasn't allowed to say this because I do a podcast with Thorin and he hates women. And what's so curious to me was I don't remember seeing any posts, and maybe I'm wrong, he's here now, he can correct us, where he said he hates women, or he doesn't want women to play Counter-Strike, or he doesn't think women should be competing. I remember Thorin pointing out that there were mistakes. You pointed out mistakes with the Valve ranking.
Sure.
And then you proceeded to criticize players the exact same way we criticize Wonderful from Na'Vi.
Yeah.
And do you think that maybe the crux of this conversation got lost? Because for me, what happened was everyone was standing up saying, you're not allowed to criticize this team anymore. You can't say that they don't deserve to be there. But the same people saying that are people that have not advocated for women's teams to have invites to Pro League, who do not advocate for women to be on the big stages, and most importantly, who don't even bother to watch ESL Impact. So I think that was something that really got under my skin a little bit, is it became this politicized thing versus us all talking about how we can improve the scene. And if you had an opinion that wasn't, this team is great and they should just be cheered on, you were immediately classified as someone who was against women.
I mean, I will say, first of all, that's also a rich opinion. The idea that, like, you as a woman aren't allowed an opinion on women in esports tournaments, but then we're supposed to be all about empowering women and listen to their voices. Like, funny how that works, isn't it? It's very selective where people want to hear in that sense. No, the problem with this whole topic is, I actually do think you've nailed it. The worst thing about it was it did become kind of a political circus where it wasn't even about Imperial Valkyries and them being the best women's team and how they match up. It became a thing, like you say, of like, I could tell there was people from esports who never watched a Counter-Strike match before, and they definitely never watched ESL Impact. And they came in, and suddenly they made it like this big social moment where, for real, they presented it as if men were playing women for the first time ever in Counter-Strike. And I have to say, as the esports historian, that really pisses me off, because as you'll have seen with my interview with Miss Harvey, I was literally at the tournaments 20 years ago where they were already playing. Like, by the way, Vilga was playing some of these tournaments in 1.6. Like, this stuff, not only was there a women's scene years ago, and they already had lands and prize money and successful dynasties, etc., but also, in the meantime, we've had plenty of times where online, a million times they've played, and we certainly had lands they attended, etc. The joke is some of the players from Imperial Valkyries were at like DreamHack, I think it was Rotterdam 2019 was like the land where they went to. So first of all, that thing is just annoying, because then when people are sort of making this whole thing like, hey, but wait, we haven't seen them play yet. It's like, look, we do have a trend in history. We can point out what happened in past occasions they played, but people tried to ignore that and make that like you were hating on them. And no, here's the thing, Sam. I actually do hate all types of people, but on the basis of who they are as people. That's the key thing. So I hate really annoying people, obnoxious people who talk shit to me. You can do it if you do it playfully, like Phil was saying she did. That's okay. That's all right. We can do the sort of wrestling banter. That's cool. But yeah, people who are entitled, selfish, malicious in their intent. But the secret there is that covers all spectrums of humanity, doesn't it? That's all different nationalities. That's men. That's every single type of person. So in general, I would say just look at my body of work. If you think I hate women, then I'm kind of going about it the wrong way. I like the fact I'm doing this show, doing all the other shows, I've done all these interviews, etc. So, and also, lastly, I'll just tag on to that last point. The other thing that really annoyed me was, you'll notice most of the people directly like trash talking me were people who were very, very young female players who were like of this generation, and they haven't been around for the history of the game. So maybe they don't know, for example, how the ESL Impact circuit came about, what ESWC was like back in 1.6. They don't even know my history in the space. And the reason that was obnoxious is I noticed there weren't a lot of super old school veteran women playing that, because spoiler, they are actually my friends. I've known those people for years. I literally hired Potter to be the #1 analyst on Flashpoint, $1 million tournament, when ESL, this woke company working with Anarchy, didn't even give her a spot on any major tournament. She wasn't getting invited to our kind of 8 circle or something like that. So you go back, I was actually in SK Gaming when they had the team, SK Ladies, which, if you don't know, was like the Imperial Valkyries of their day and used to just win every single ESWC and was a dynasty. And if you actually imagine we were just going, who gives a fuck about you? You're just women. No, they were champions in their game. And in our org was about being a multi-game championship org. So we had the FIFA players, and we had the people in League of Legends, we had the people in Capture, and then we had the women's team, which was even called, by the way, SK Ladies instead of female. We had like a cool sort of thing where, if you don't know, lady obviously implies like sort of a level of class and sophistication, doesn't it? So the idea that like I just don't know any of these people, or I myself am not aware of the history of the game, that's just annoying. And then lastly, this is just one of those cheeky banter shots across the bow. I also, as someone who was there, lived it, learned a lot about the economics of the industry over the years. I won't be told how male Counter-Strike got big by someone who was 9 years old at the time it occurred. That's just a little shot. If you know who I'm referring to, that's just a little shot. It's all good.
I
mean, how do you feel? Like, you could jump in there. I mean, you've heard everything Thorin said. You heard what I had to say.
No, listen. Yeah, I had like several topics already in my head, but like I will start with the recent one. I personally don't think that you're a women hater, Duncan, right? I don't think so. I just think, like you said, like you're a hater. And then if you have a chance to hate on someone, you will use it as chance,
Definitely.
right?
And by the way, if the other thing you'll notice is I was talking very vaguely about Imperial Valkyries. When Anna decided to directly talk shit to me, well, listen, that's just game on at that point in time. You know what I mean? If you put on the gloves and get in the boxing ring, like, come on, then you know what? Someone's going to punch back. That's just how the scene works. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but I think the problem why there's like such a resonance against like among the female teams, like among female players, is because like we're already being shitted on our whole career. Like, you know, like it's literally like every day shitted on. Either it's on Faceit, either it's on in real life, either like we're women, right? We're supposed to be weak. So like we are fighting battles every day. Like it's just not many people like not men will not understand this. It's just like
Okay.
our battles, right? We just don't speak about them. I'm not even talking about like period, right? Like how hard it is, how difficult it is, and all this. But the problem here is that when people start not people, like I'm not talking about like randoms, right, who never watched ESL Impact and all this, but who represent esports, and you are esport, right?
Sure.
This is when you talk shit about us. This is when it gets like it's salt on the wound, basically. Like we want support. We want like some nice words, something like you can also add like something positive about this, right? But instead, like you choose to trash talk teams, players, whatever. But like, would be nice to also hear the support from like representatives of the esports, of the Counter-Strike, right?
Sure.
And I think like that's would be just nice to receive. That's.
I mean, I will say,
yeah.
this ties back into something you said earlier. I literally did all those things. By the way, most of the points
Yeah.
I just made in the first 10 minutes, I made all those points on Twitter. The problem is, though, that tweet doesn't go viral because that's the nature of social media. People want the drama and they want the negativity.
Yeah.
That's what they come to. So unfortunately, that doesn't get promoted to the top of the algorithm with 7,000 likes. But one where I'm like, look, this is the player of the year, and they're shitting the bet on the fucking scoreboard, and then them replying like, you're fucking clown. That gets all the likes, of course. So that's also unfortunately the nature of social media. I agree, though. In fact, there's even a little topic I wanted to bring up with you, and I want to ask you about, which is one of the things, and I say this in my reflections with Miss Harvey, because if you don't know, she's one of the main people who actually changed my own perspective on women's esports. Like,
nice.
I did used to think some of the things back in the day, I'm talking like 10 years ago now, like, actually, why do they even bother competing in a women's circuit? Like, you should just compete with the men, and eventually, if you get good enough, you'll be good. And if you aren't, then you aren't. And what I didn't actually understand was this. A core difference, I think, between men and women from my own experience in life is I actually think men, look, it's not that like they are hard and like they have to be tough or whatever, but I do think men in a weird way respond to sort of like harsh resistance in a way where that is what develops the people who are very competitive. Like if you sort of tell a man you can't do something, you shit. There's a certain type of man that'll break as well, or just be like, oh, fuck. But there's a type of man that'll be like, I'm going to prove you wrong. And you know what? That's going to fuel me every day. I actually find you get rare women who are like that. People like Potter, Miss Harvey yourself on some level are like that. But there's also women as well where actually they do need to have like a lot of people around them as a support network, and they need people to tell them, no, you can do it. Like, I believe in you. And actually, in some ways, this is what I think as a man, it's hard to understand this. It's a different perspective. They almost need, if you want like the Dragon Ball Z analogy, they need like a spirit bomb of people believing in them and like positivity around them to help them perform at their absolute best. And if you do that, then some of them actually will sort of make it through the gauntlet of trying to compete with all this and have the swirling scrutiny of the media landscape. So I think a lot of men don't appreciate that. They actually think that it's just like, say, I get pretty sweet. I'll give you a quick side thing. It's a bit like when there's some sort of tragedy in the world and people do that thing of like, oh, thoughts and prayers. You know, it's a very male online edgy thing to be like, thoughts and prayers. What does that do? That doesn't even help. You're just fucking wasting your time. No, for you, maybe it doesn't matter, mate. Maybe you wouldn't give a fuck, but there's people out there where actually just knowing you're thinking about them or praying for them, whether it's real or not, would absolutely help them feel better. And it would actually make them feel like, right, I'm not hated by everyone. Like maybe I can have a space in which I can compete. So that's why actually, if we get into the whole female topic, I actually am, the joke is I am in favor of the female circuit, because if you don't have that, you will only have people in qualifiers. And by the way, they won't even be pro. So they'll be practicing the game less, or they'll be able to play the game less. It'll be even worse for the female scene.
Yeah. I mean, the topic that you talked about right now is rooted really deeply, I feel like. Like, it's rooted in the sociology, right, in general. Like, the way women and men are being raised. Women and men have, like, friends. And basically, like, basically, right, when a girl is born, what is she told to do? Play with dolls, do the makeup, wear dresses. Same goes with men, right? Be tough, you need to do boxing, you need to play football. And then this is basically how the personality is created, right? And imagine how many girls are like this, right? Like where they are soft and when they're like girly, all this. Like you need to have like a really strong personality to be able to play this game and compete, especially win tournaments. So you need to be really strong inside, mentally. So like, yeah, like this is just like a topic of being raised, like who are you being raised at and how. And like if people support what you do, like for example, my parents, right, they supported me playing video games when I was like 13 years old, right? But for some, it's not possible.
Sure.
So I think like it's just very complicated topic. It goes really deep into the roots of like how you raised, and then hopefully eventually this like boundaries, like being a girly girl and being like a manly man will slowly, go away.
It's super nuanced though, because this is like, now we're getting into a whole different conversation that's less about Counter-Strike and like how you said how men and women are raised. And this is something I've always struggled with, because my dad was definitely on the spectrum, and I don't think he really knew how to communicate with anyone. And his favorite way, like his only way of bonding with me as a kid, was one, to like let me play games with him. I remember being very young, sitting on his lap playing Doom, a game you shouldn't let a small child be playing with him, but whatever.
That explains a lot.
Like,
okay.
When I was 12 years old, he taught me how to hack into people's Hotmail addresses. I mean, this was how he
sounds sick,
right?
I'm
he's a cool guy.
Okay. I'm a fan.
So like, and didn't tell me that you shouldn't tell people that you've broken into their
All
Hotmail
right.
addresses. But that's a whole other story. But that was how he was. But he also was very much like, I know that he raised me a little bit like a boy. So it was like, you speak up, you be tough. Don't let anyone tell you what you can and cannot do. And I didn't even realize that there was actually a gender dynamic until I was much older at like university. And I suddenly like, oh, wait, like I'm different because I'm a woman. Because my dad just, that never happened. But it means that I grew up like you, Vilga. Like, I'm a little bit of an arsehole. I speak my mind. Like Thorin mentioned, if you tell me I can't do something, it's like a red flag, and I'm like, screw you, I'm going to go do it now.
Yeah.
But it took me a very long time to realize that a lot of women are not like me. A lot of women have been taught to be timid and quiet. So when I first sort of, with Counter-Strike specifically, where there was a lot of conversations around women's leagues, and in South Africa, I tried to set up the first like women's match and see if we could do like a show match. When women were saying like everyone's mean to me on the internet, I was like, yeah, well, everyone's mean to me too. Like, suck it up. That was kind of my attitude. And I very quickly learned that it's very different for other people. But there is a fine line from a competition standpoint. And I mean, it brings me back to that very famous moment in ESL Impact where we can't, if you want to compete and you want to be in a competition, whether it's an all women's competition, whether it's a mixed gender competition, whether it's Counter-Strike or another sport, competition unfortunately comes with criticism. We're going to talk about how badly you played. If you shit the bed, people are going to say you shit the bed. So where is the line though? Because I think this is where everyone struggled with Valkyries at these big tournaments, is people didn't want to hear criticism of their play style. And it immediately became a thing of, you can't criticize them because they're women. That bugged me as a woman. But obviously then there was also the other line of the criticism was, you are a woman, and there was nothing else to it.
Yeah, sure.
Vilga, where is the line? Because we can't only say nice things, right?
Yeah.
If teams are competing, sometimes we have to criticize the way they play.
No, 100% I agree with this, right? Like, criticism is important. Criticism is that what makes you stronger, right? But I think criticism lays into, if they criticize me for being a woman, this is a lie. Like, they cannot criticize me for being a woman, right? And then if I'm a woman, then I'm stupid, I'm weak, I don't understand things, I cannot like do things properly. Like, this is a lie. But if I play the game right, and then like I do something stupid in the game, if someone tells me that I did this stupid, I will accept this, right? Or I will learn from it. Because like I do criticize myself a lot. Like, I don't think I will be who I am if I haven't criticized myself a lot, right? But at the same time, criticism should also come with, you can't just criticize all the time, right? You should also praise others, right? You should also like say good job. Because like for myself as well, if I just criticize myself all the time, I would be like super depressed.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
I also need to tell myself, yeah, I did a good job here. I'm proud of myself there, and so on and so on. So yeah, hope it answers like the question.
It does. I mean, Thorin, do you think that people were scared to speak about Imperial Valkyries the way they would speak about other teams on a desk, positive and negative?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the obvious joke would be, you can praise when they did stuff like the Na'Vi game. By the way, early in those games, they were even leading at certain times. I even pointed out, by the way, the reason you knew people made it some weird political thing is HLTV.org always puts highlights from the game on their front page. It'll be like video, Wonderful does a 1v3 against Spirit or something, right?
Yeah.
And what's weird is they had all these posts about that match, and then they didn't even put that like Cat 1v2 Deagle clutch against like the fucking major winners of last year. Like, if you wanted to highlight something good, put that clip. That, by the way, that clip, you don't even have, if you could take the nameplate off and not know what the player is, and you'd be like, that's a fucking sick headshot. What a great round win. So that's an example where there are positives you can find within it. Also, you obviously could have just said on the desk things like, you can do what's called the compliment sandwich, where you say compliment, you criticize, and you do a compliment. So what you could have said is, like, you could have said, for example, like, they did actually pretty well on like map 1 against Fury or whatever, and then the criticism is obviously on the second map, they got destroyed, went really badly on that one.
Yeah.
Then the other compliment could be like, but look how they played without their in-game leader. Because there's another angle I thought was so annoying that was getting in the way of real analysis. By the way, if any team, so in theory, the number one team coming into this year was Team Spirit, right? Because they won the major. If Spirit went to Katowice without Chopper and they had just their coach, Hallie, play instead of Chopper, I would say before every single match as an analyst, I'm not going to treat this like it's Team Spirit and they have to be at their peak level. They don't even have their in-game leader, who, by the way, is one of the most pivotal parts of any team. That's the person calling the game, controlling the game. And remember, the coach can only talk during timeouts, so it's not the old world.
It's
so
the leader.
That's a totally reasonable thing you could say to temper expectations. The problem was people wanted to have it both ways. So then if they did really well, people were like ignoring that part and just being like, oh, look, they're just as good as all these other teams. So in some ways, people were like having this dynamic where both sides were saying the thing that annoyed the other and just made it get worse and worse and worse and worse. Like, I actually thought there were always positives you could have picked out. I mean, the obvious angle is, I would say you certainly need to criticize when people like Anna play badly, because they are literally the 3-time reigning women's player of the year. Like that's not just supposed to be a woman's player. That's supposed to be like, I mean, I'll use Donk, I guess, because he's a rifle. That's supposed to be like the female Ziwu. It really is if you watch the game. So if someone like that plays badly, look, part of why you get those awards is then if you underperform, people are going to say, hey, what happened? Like, where were you in the game? Or are you having trouble adapting or something? But if you don't know, in every single game, you could also highlight someone who did well. So if you go way back to the last one, Tori had a pretty good series. If you go to the one in Katowice, actually 23 had a good series. She even actually had a good map, by the way. Even on the one they got destroyed, she actually fragged out still. So there were still things you could praise about them as a team in the same way as you could always critique. I also agree with Vilga, by the way. You critique also doesn't have to be like they suck, they got no frags. You could do actual constructive critique. Like an obvious critique I would have had would be, it looked like when they played in the female scene, I don't watch ESL Impact either. It's not my fault. Almost no one does. All those people on Twitter don't either. If you all did, by the way, we'd be doing record numbers, and that tournament would have even more prize money. I'll tell sponsors, I'll tell you right now. But my assumption from watching some of these games was it looked like sometimes these players were trying to take like straight up mechanical duels with players, where I'm imagining in ESL Impact, they are the mechanical superior player and they just win that duel. Whereas sometimes it looked like people took duels with their aim where they just lost the duel outright. That you don't even have to play CS that way. That's a thing you can adapt to. You can be more tactical. You can use positioning. You can use utility. These are things that you could level up. It's not just like a static thing like, right, you suck. You're at like level 3 out of 10. They're all 8 out of 10 male players and you'll never be at their level. It's about how do you match up and what you're doing in the game. So yeah, I thought there was a lot you could have highlighted.
Yeah, but I think we should also remember and think about the confidence level that the teams come in the match, right? Playing against each other. Like, for example, Fury or Navi playing against the women's team. They will not even worry. They will not have even one nerve stress in their body. They will just play their own game. Whereas, like I said before, for Imperial, I think it's a huge stress. And like taking these duels, right? Like even if they are super good aimers, like all of them are. Like, so for example, even Anna, right? You're talking about like she's a reigning champion 3 times in a row, but she is one of the best snipers in the world I've ever seen. Like, she's the best women sniper. That's like that I can tell you 100%. And we don't know what is happening in her head, right? But yes, I agree with you. If you want to be a champion, you need to be able to play these situations with confidence and stay calm no matter what, right? Because this is what makes you a champion. You need to stay cold-blooded. But since it's like rare experience to be playing high-tier teams on LAN, I think that's like what got her. The nerves, the stress, whatever it is, you never know. But yeah, I agree.
Just to give a different perspective, I do think there was some pressure for the men, but here's the thing, Vilga. The pressure only starts, I think, like the Na'Vi game where they're leading against you, or the Fury game where you're almost... There's pressure at that moment for the male team because they all think they're going to get the Cadian thing, which you lost to Juliana and everyone's going to make fun of you, which, by the way, is a problem in itself. Like, I've got to say, you have to be fair. If you want to have principles, you have to stick to them. So if people want to say we should create a space in which the women aren't considered different or worse, and they're just allowed to compete, and we're going to see if they're good enough, the same people can't then turn around and laugh at Katie and go, you lost to a girl. Like, you're reinforcing the same stereotypes you're claiming you don't want to exist later, by which you will then judge the women. Because logically, if Katie had destroyed her in that 1v1, no one would have gone, oh, she lost, she got wrecked because she's a girl like that. Like, there has to be a fair play to banter. You have to be able to like take it and give it in that sense. And then also, I will say that is, I agree, I do think in general that the pressure, it was presented the other way, like, oh, well, they haven't played yet, so there's no pressure. No, there was insane pressure. Like you're saying, essentially, not only were they going to be written off as they're just trash forever, and by the way, people forget this, they don't technically know based on the system yet, because VRS keeps changing, how many more events they're going to get. They might have even thought that Blast Bounty one was just it. That was the one match ever they're going to get. Then suddenly they got Katowice, then suddenly they got Cluj. They couldn't have known these things. So as a result, the pressure would be huge. So I actually think, by the way, I'd even say that's where the broadcast could also meet us halfway. Instead of yourselves hyping it, because they made it sound on the broadcast like they actually were going to beat like Na'Vi just straight up, and that was even plausible, you know. Whereas instead, if you just set the expectations reasonable, like a team coming from a smaller region that hasn't played a big land before, then if you'd have had this performance, you'd be like, oh wow, it's way better than I expected. Maybe there's something else going on here. So actually, I think one thing you could do as a broadcast is what we're talking about here. Actually, do an interview with Anna and ask her, like, has there been a lot of pressure on you as like the reigning women's #1 player for 3 years to go to these lands, and then people scrutinizing you and waiting for you to fill? Like, how's that affected you? So I think, again, actually, when people share their experiences and how they felt and what they were thinking, I think automatically you just bridge the gap to other humans, because then they become another human. It humanizes them. They're not just a name that's doing something on a server. I think that's actually really important if you want to understand this aspect.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, you know, players can lie about this. They can be like, it was like, there was no pressure on us because no one expected anything from us, like all this bullshit. And I think it is bullshit, because like if I'm playing the, like I said, I don't know, like maybe everyone else is different, right? But I've been competing this game for so many years, and if I would play against Fury or whoever, I would still feel so nervous, you know? Like, I think it's just natural, because it's something, it's out of your comfort zone. It's something unnatural for you. It's something new. But we never know.
Yeah, there is a part of me, and again, this goes back to not everyone is the same, but there was a part of me that kind of wanted someone from Imperial to come out and go, you know what? We know the VRS system is a little bit screwed. We're well aware that we're probably taking a spot, and there's other teams that are more experienced, but hell, we're going to take this opportunity because we don't know if we'll ever get it again. I kind of think if they had maybe owned that, the hate online and the argument against them would have been a little bit less. But I do want to pivot. I
mean, that's even a saying we have it. That saying is, don't hate the player, hate the game. It's just the system that invite them. They didn't invite themselves to the tournament.
Yeah. That always drew, that blew my mind. Like when you saw the forums, people were like, "Oh, they shouldn't have accepted the invites." I was like, "Oh, shove!"
No, that's
if
ridiculous.
I got offered a chance to be at Kato, we're going to Kato.
Sure.
If you get invited to the major, even if you think you shouldn't be there, you're going. It's the bloody major.
If you invite me, I'll go. I'll get wrecked. I don't give a fuck. I'll definitely turn up. Why not? Why wouldn't I? Yeah.
Exactly. But I did want to ask, because this has come up a lot, and this was something that bugged me quite a bit, which is no one watches ESL Impact.
It's annoying,
everyone was so incredibly vocal about this team. Everyone was so involved, whether they were for or against.
Yeah, sure.
And I would watch this team play, and then like 2 days later, they're playing an online game for ESL Impact. No one's watching it. And I'm curious as to, I'd love to pose this question to both of you. Why do you think people don't watch ESL Impact, Vilga?
Just stereotypes. Women cannot play. That's why. And I think the reason to fix it, well, first of all, for women players to show better results, right? To show better game, to show something that people will be interested in. But I also think, like, if pro players would kind of promote the scene with their like tweets or whatever, like, or like share the link or like share the highlights, whatever, be a part of it, you know, be a part of improving the scene. I think that would be really helpful as well. But it's hard. But I think like the main reason is because like people think that women players are shit and there's no point of watching it.
I've got a few good angles for you. So first of all, I'll actually use this moment to call out women. You're all telling me online you support women in esports and you support Imperial Valkyries. By the way, if you love Imperial Valkyries, you're going to really love watching them play the ESL Impact. They fucking wreck everyone. They're the dynasty. They win all the matches. It's going to be way better than watching them lose a match and go, oh, that sucks. So if you actually support them, here's the reason why I would say women in esports should actually go out of their way to support this team and put a note in your Google Calendar when the ESL Impact game is and tune in and support them. And by the way, it's hilarious you criticising Tech Girl. She's the fucking host of ESL Impact, you idiots. Like, you obviously don't watch it, do you? Because you don't know she knows what she's talking about. She's not just piping out from the peanut gallery, some stupid opinion. So the reason why I say women can support this is because it already happened in sports. Like in football, literally the national sport of my country that was invented, one of the biggest sports in the world, the British team, English team, the Lionesses they're called, are mega supported within the UK, like because they're champions, if people don't know, they're one of the best teams. And so actually loads of the men got into watching it, like, oh, what we have, like, because the joke is like England football team hasn't won anything for ages. Like, wait a minute, there's one that can win. So they started watching and they actually have their own like crowd support and stuff. And if you don't know, the actual USA team in soccer was like actually like the GOAT team. They won like loads of World Cups and Olympic gold medals and stuff. And they actually have quite high profile. In fact, if you mention some of the names from their team, they're famous people within American sports. So first of all, women themselves can support it. Then secondly, I'll tell you the other obvious angle. And I actually think, here's my prediction. In the future, this is also why you want to keep doing ESL Impact. In the future, there will be large viewership for it, maybe not comparable to the major in men's CS.
Yeah.
And here's why. Because think about the guy who is a pro player or a competitive CS player today. We still haven't, there's not that many people around from the early days of 1.6 like some of us. So as a result, most people are probably in their like early to mid 20s who follow CS now. If CS, and I think it will be, exists in 20 years, they're going to be the dad. And so in the same way as they're going to want ESL Impact so their daughter has something to aspire to and playing, because like you, Sam, they're playing with their daughter as a way to bond with them. It's a great way to bond with people and shared hobbies and things that you're into. And then also, secondly, they're going to watch the league because since they have a daughter and she plays CS or cares about it, they're going to be interested in the league in the same ways in America. The reason they have an amazing sports culture around schools and high schools and colleges is because people support their community and their kids. Like, there's an obvious reason why people would be interested in it. And then lastly, I'm with you. On the pros one, I'd just say it this way. It's all well and good getting the old Twitter fingers out, typing in something like, wow, what an amazing, these guys are almost as good as us. Send tweet and then sitting back like, imaginary internet hearts. I do like being loved. But the same person, Gel, let me know when you tweet about ESL Impact, mate. When they're in the finals, let us know. Give us a tweet and a link. Tell us, hey, that team that I said could compete with Navi, they're playing in the ESL Impact fight. Let us know, bro, because I'll tell you what, you'll never see that tweet, mate. You know that tweet isn't going to be the one that'll blow up and you just won't get the attention. So if there are male pros who've made comments saying this was really good and they enjoy it, well, then actually live up to it. Actually show that you follow the league, that you care about it. Do it.
No, but he does. He does care.
Okay.
Actually, he made a post once about his girlfriend playing some matchmaking on Faceit or whatever, and how toxic people were to her. And then he said, like, we should stop this. So he does care about this. But, well, yes, promoting ESL Impact, promoting female tournaments would be the best, but I think they still care. And also, to the conversation that you just had right now about the parents, right, and all this. I saw study somewhere that basically there's more percentage of women actually involved in the video games. Why? Because moms buy the games for the kids, because wives or girlfriends have to like also like give the games or whatever, like just endure their boyfriends playing the games. So like actually the amount of women into video games is much higher, like not directly but
I know what you mean.
Outside. Yeah.
By the way, similarly, that's also a reason why there'll be more women, because in the modern day, women also bond with their boyfriend playing the game too.
Exactly.
If you get a second PC, you start playing with them. Then they're not just off watching TV and you're just doing the game. It's a bit antisocial if you do that.
100%.
To jump on the pro player conversation, though, this is something I'm probably, here we go. I'm just going to stop getting hired by TOs because I'm going to just stall the beans here. Do you know that I have been approached by, like, this conversation has come up, pro players, other talents, this is a common conversation. Everyone says the same thing, and they have brought it up with TOs. Why are we having show matches? Let's get the final of ESL Impact, or let's put a women's invitational.
Yeah.
That is the show match. Put it on the big stage. Let the fans see it before the final. It's going to put so many more eyeballs on it. Plus, it's more for the scene. It's going to be better than a show match. It's going to grow. And I know pro players have said this. I know other sort of talents have said it. And it constantly gets shut down for whatever reason. And I think that maybe that is why this whole Imperial Valkyries thing used to set me, the last few months, it set me off so much because I feel like there was a lot of posturing. I was like, if you really care about the scene, we can make like actual differences, like create spaces. And we're speaking about it now. Why are we not inviting the winning team? I think that the ESL Impact winning team on LAN should automatically get a Pro League invite. We did it with Challenger. Do it with Impact. Create those opportunities. And I think that that's something that the VRS system maybe, but by being a little bit stuffed up and allowing Imperial Valkyries into the mix, I mean, Vilga, do you think it will possibly open some eyeballs and get people to change this and create more opportunities for women? Or do you think we're going to go back to exactly how it was in a couple of months' time if Valkyries obviously not winning means that they're not going to be invited to these events?
I mean, there are more events than just ESL Pro League, right? Just so you know, by the way, something that I wanted to say before is that because of performance of Imperial Valkyries at the LAN tournaments, we, like our team, started getting more good, better pregs. We started getting more invitations to online tournaments, something like Yala Compass or CC. Not us, we didn't get invited to CCC, but we got invited to something else. So like, because of their performance, basically, we're getting more chances, right? And regarding the invitation to the Challenger tournaments or ESL Pro League, I think it's a very good idea. And I think like the more chances like this we get, the better practice we're gonna get, the higher like skill level gonna be eventually, right? Also, like what Thorin talked about earlier about the Spanish circuit, right? That they get invitation to ESL Pro League. There's not just for Spanish. There is UKCS, right? The UK IC it's called, where like they get invites to ESL Pro League, or before they got invited.
Yeah.
Now there also was ESL Polish, where like I even like have a link to it on Wikipedia. It's basically like there was a team Paloma who got invitation to IEM Katowice 2014, right? Who knows Paloma? Like if they play bad, no one is gonna talk about them, right? It's gonna be like, yeah, they're supposed to play bad because like who are they in comparison like with the big organizations like Navi or Sim Spirit? But if a female team gets invited, then they get so much shit. And they got told that they're not supposed to be there. But there are tournaments, there are leagues in their country, national leagues, right? National, where they got direct invitations to bigger tournaments. And I think it's exactly what we need, but not like to tier 1, right? Like what we talked about, but something like, I don't know, top 40, top 50 teams.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be like enough. It's going to be good enough for us to improve. And eventually, hopefully, like in 10 years, we will be able to play like on a big stage.
Okay, let me think. First of all, I'll bring up the point you said, Sam. I actually do think that's a very good idea about the show match because, first of all, the show matches they already do always look amazing on paper, right? But my joke would be, it's like when you hear that like 50-year-old boxers are going to fight, like Mike Tyson's going to fight Holyfield, and you go, that used to be great. I can't wait for that. And it's an absolute travesty. You're like, why are we putting this on? So when you tell me like, oh, you know, we're going to have like Olaf and JW come back and they're going to play Kenny S, it's like, that sounds mega, but the guys, they don't play as pros anymore. And those show matches are just bad show matches. And unfortunately, a lot of them also don't seem to understand in the men's game the concept of a show match. They play it seriously and try and frag out. And it's like, you're supposed to do stuff like try and knife the guy or do a stupid boost or be silly. So already, I don't think the show matches we currently have are very good. So if you actually could put essentially a real competitive match there, I think that's actually way better because one of the reasons if people don't understand event formats why you always have a show match before the final is it's actually a way to like set up everything for the day, for the final. Like you're checking all the stage works, the broadcast works. You get people onto your broadcast before the final begins. It's like doing a Twitch stream. You can't do a Twitch stream, turn your stream on and start talking from second one because nobody's on the stream yet. They're not going to hear any of the things you said. They're going to join in 5 minutes when they see the link. So it's a way to like warm everyone up. It's almost like the equivalent of when you have a comedian who's famous, he has a guy comes on before him who warms the crowd up and gets everyone ready in the mood for the comedian, right? So one of the things you could do, I agree. One obvious aspect you could do, by the way, that would help massively is actually have that be the final of ESL Impact or like the end of the circuit or something. Because another problem you have, look, they haven't made the playoffs yet, is if you see what the ESL Impact League is like, it is largely a studio LAN. And so you don't actually get a core experience of being pro, which is an audience and knowing that pressure and knowing what it's like to have the lights in your eyes and to not really have sort of anywhere to turn if things are going badly and people trash talking in that environment. It's why actually, even in men's CS, an obvious example would be that Mouse team who just won now, that core was really, really good in studios. But if they ever played FaZe, it wasn't even actually the top team last year. FaZe is so experienced on the stage, they would always get them. They'd always play off that pressure and actually be able to beat them with experience and stuff. So first of all, you'd get more and that's it. Secondly, people who are going to watch the final anyway will actually watch the ESL Impact final. So now they'll actually know who these teams are and they'll know, for example, that Imperial Valkyries is the best team in that circuit. And they'll see people like Anna in their element actually fragging out and having top performances. So they'll have something to contrast it with when they then go and play play again. Because here's the key thing I want to make a point of. A big mistake people are making. They do it in all levels of CS, by the way. The joke is, if you look on HLTV forums when Wonderful plays, he misses an AWP shot and fans go, he's missing easy shots. It's like, bro, they're easy for you because you're playing noobs and you're a noob. Like, that shot isn't that easy when you're playing against Spinks, and you know if you miss, he just smashes your head in with an AK instantly. He kills you and takes the whole site. Like, there's a line that this guy had. There was a guy who was on the bench for the Boston Celtics basketball team. Because he was on the bench, he only played a few minutes and he wasn't like a star in any way. And their team won the championship. So people who were fans online would always go, you didn't win the championship. You're shit. I could probably do that. So what he did in real life was he invited people from the internet who were trash talking him to a gym. He filmed it and he played them one-on-one. And you can imagine, if you know how sports work, he destroyed them. Yeah. This guy didn't even look like an athlete. He was winning like 10-1, 10-0. And so he had this line he said that was straight fire. He said, I'm closer to LeBron, who was considered the best player at the time, than you, the fan, are to me. You have to understand that. So I think people need to understand this. You've heard stories online of like semi-pros or pros that have played the female teams and they've destroyed them. It makes the guy on Reddit think he would actually beat them in the game. No. Understand, Anna is closer to Ziwu than you are to Anna. If you don't understand that, you actually don't understand levels of CS. So that's why I actually think it would be 100%. Beneficial to bring it back, for you actually to see these people owning and see them dominating in their space. Another angle you could do, if you want an actual show match, by the way, an obvious one to me, would be from scrims in the background, actually figure out a team where, think about how the sport golf works. In golf, you can play with better people. If you either have a handicap in the game, you get given a few holes, you start 3 holes up because you're playing a pro, or you play someone at your level. So it's a fun game and you can both compete. So an obvious angle you could do would be, you either could be silly and just give them a head start, or the obvious one to me would be, from scrims, you already know who you compete with from the male scene. Pick a team that is like 42nd, but you've played games and there were some competitive games. That, by the way, that team would love a chance to go to Katowice and be on the finals day, be on the stage. Then, by the way, that team's never qualifying to fucking Katowice. They're never going to get in that tournament. They would accept the invite, and then you could actually have a game that's close. It could be entertaining. Because I agree with you. I think that's the part that's missed about that whole topic, is like, there's so many more things we can even do. It doesn't have to just be take the number 1 team, throw them into Katowice. Did he make it? Nope. Right. Oh, well, forget that then. Like, that's too extreme one way or the other.
I think the most important thing that we never mention is that we just need more women tournaments. Like, we just need more women tournaments, right? We can like get all this invitation, being the best team in the world and all this, but like the original problem, right, is the lack of the women tournaments. And the more women tournaments going to be, they're going to be more female athletes. They're going to be better competition, more people to choose from, right? More people like with better and stronger personality, fit for competitive scene. And eventually, I feel like the skill gap is going to get smaller. If we will have not like 10% of women players, right, in the world, but let's say even 30%, going to change everything.
Okay. I have an edgy question for you.
Yeah.
What would the point of doing a show with me be if I didn't have one? Here's the question. When you said there that you were getting better scrims, I have another obvious question for some of the pros. Like, JL, you're in Navi, mate. That was the number 1 team last year. Well, up until not that long ago, there was a female team. It's called Navi Javelins. They also were one of the top impact leagues. Here's the thing, JL. Why don't you just scrim against them? If you're talking about giving them opportunity, you could scrim your main team against theirs. So could Imperial, so could Furia. Does it happen, Vilga? Do people actually, when they have a male team, ever get scrims between the female and the male team?
We never practice against the main team, but we practice against the young ninjas.
Right, the academy team, right.
Yeah, academy team. So I think practicing like women's team and academy team is going to be like really good idea. It's like when we practice against them, actually, the score was not like, 24-0. No, it was something like, I don't know, 10-14 or something like this.
Right.
10-13. It's this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a very good idea.
And also, by the way, it's even it's got an extra value to it, even if the teams are different levels. Because the difference is, if you're both in the same org, you're not going to go and leak all strats to the other fucking team.
Exactly.
So there's actually even an added benefit. Yeah, I agree.
Exactly.
I think that was something as well, and we need to wrap it up because I know Vilga actually has to go practice. But one of the things that I was also concerned about with the VRS system is a situation where organizations are going to be forced to potentially choose between what is now their male team or their top team and their women's
happened with
team.
Fury already, don't it? Yeah,
and I mean that is something that does worry me as well, because on paper there could be a situation where I know that it's set up that obviously they don't want conflicts of interest and stuff, but there could be a situation where Vilga's approached by our organization and they're like, well, you have to decline this invite because we need the male team to
Right.
take the invite instead. Is that something that you're worried about, Vilga? Because it was something I'm assuming here. So let me just give you a little bit of background. I know that there was an invite that Imperial Valkyries turned down. And
Yeah.
the internet conversation was they are doing it to save their VRS ranking. But and again, I'm assuming, I was like, are they? Because the moment they turned it down, then their male team got to go. And I was like,
Oh,
was it
right.
not a matter of someone in the org
Could be,
going, hey,
right.
hold on, you got to let the boys play now? Like, you're going to have to turn that down. Again, I don't know if that's the case.
No,
I don't
no,
understand
could
the
be.
maths. But I do worry that is something that could also happen now with the VRS system.
Yeah, well, this is like just a speculation, right? What you talked about. Maybe it's true, maybe not. But for me, like for the organization itself, number one team always is the main team. So let's say we wanted to participate in the major qualifications. We cannot do it. Like it was once happened that we started open qualifications or something. Then we start playing it, and then the faceit admin pauses the match and says, "There's a main team playing in this tournament. You have to forfeit the match," and that's happened. So it's like I guess contractual, like that. It's not written in the contract, right? But the main team goes first, and then like everyone after the main team.
But are they the main team if I'm higher than them in the VRS system, in the
Edgy.
rankings?
Oh, edgy. Okay.
I think they are still the main team, yeah. Because like what we talked about, the VRS system is a bit flawed, even though like you said, Valve knew this gonna happen, but I believe
Sure.
it's still flawed because the prize money that is won is from a completely different
Yes.
tournament that is super unfair because the male team cannot participate in the women's team
Yes.
to earn this kind of prize money. So
I'll leave you with an edgy joke. Obviously, the male team are the main team, but it's confusing because the female team are the ESEA main team.
that's
Not
sad.
bad. Not bad.
That's really
so
good.
bad. Okay, final questions to both of you. What would you suggest we do to change this? Because this is a conversation I have with everyone. It is a conversation and a debate that I've had in my own brain. Is it ever going to change? Or are women always going to be made to feel like they don't belong? Are we always going to be in this situation until someone comes and ultimately shoots Dunk in the head in game? Like, well, what needs to change? Can it change for the women scene to be treated a little bit better? I suppose, Vilga, is maybe the way to frame this.
I mean, there is progress, obviously, right? There is progress in humanity, in the way like women treated, right? We can finally drive cars, we can finally go to the jobs, and it only happened what, like 200, 300 years ago maximum, right? So like there is progress, and I believe there is going to be progress in esports as well, where we're going to be more accepted, right? And it will take time, right? I think the moment when a women's team shows good result, this is going to be a moment where it changes everything, right? But it's not going to be a jump into good result. It's a long process that requires a lot of things, right? First of all, some strict things, like for example, what Faceit brought recently, bans, like for being toxic, right? Not only for female players, for everyone, but since we get a lot of like sexist comments on Faceit, like before I would get like every day someone would write me to go to the kitchen to make a sandwich, all these funny comments. Before I couldn't do much about this. Now they give a ban, a week, a month, a year in the end.
Okay.
So it's really good. And now I don't see toxic players anymore. I don't. If I see someone, thanks for evidence, send the ticket to Faceit. That's it. Next point is going to be more tournaments, right? More organizers being like participating in the women's team, helping, developing. We don't even need like high prize money. Like for example, right? We don't need $50,000. It's good. I'm not saying it's all back. Don't listen to me. It's good, right? Obviously, I appreciate this, but something lower with opportunity to go to LAN, with opportunity to play on the stage in front of the crowd, right? Where like the whole trip is being paid. With less prize money is already going to be good enough. And we have a lot of organizers, right? We have Blast, we have PGL, we have Yala as well. We have Traded now, who wants to make a LAN tournament actually for us. But the more tournament, the more opportunities. Like I said, we're going to see more female players, and that's exactly what we need. And third, I think in order to jump the gap or like challenge ourselves is what we discussed earlier, right? To give these opportunities to the best female team in the world to participate in like tier 2, 3 tournaments against guys. And I'm sure it will help us, right? Or like show match, right? What we talked about, not like show match, but for example, putting the finals of ESL Impact before the finals of the main tournament. I think it'd be great. For example, Dallas is the perfect opportunity to do this, right? Because we play right basically at the same time with the finals, the final day on Sunday. It's like the finals of the women scene is the same time. So like instead we can make it a bit earlier, right, and put it on the big stadium. But yeah.
Okay. By the way, I have some thoughts on this one. So first of all, one thing I think you could already do actually is if you ever notice another thing about like the idea that the women feel like they have to be like demure and be really polite, etc., is actually that is not even true. I can tell you there are men out there, just like the Giuliano Katie thing, who want actually women who will trash talk. Like it's actually a shame some of the old school people actually never got their chance at the big level. You don't know, people like Potter used to talk mad shit. They would be the people like calling people out and saying they're way better or that person's going to choke on land. Men vibe with that because that's already what they like to do. So I already think if you do ESL Impact, I would play up the personalities more. I wouldn't just do it as a straight broadcast. And then I also was thinking to myself, another thing you could do is like documentaries and basically player profiles about the top female players. Because again, once you find out what their journey was and that they also started out as a gamer, they didn't just come in because it was all money and attention. They were a gamer since they were a kid, or maybe they played with their brother or their dad, like you guys are saying. And then also they went through times where they were nervous and then they had to compete and they had to get to the top of their scene. And then they went to this event. I feel add so much. And then similarly, that's why I'm going to call out people like Imperial, etc. Here's what you could do immediately. I looked on your channel now and you have a vlogumentary it's called, about the last like ESL Impact season where Imperial Valkyries won. Take a camera when you go to fucking Katowice and Cluj, film a reality series. And by the way, if you've ever watched those reality series of sports teams, it pulls your heartstrings when they lose and they're all crying and they're really sad and their expectations are crushed. That would make people connect with them on a human level. I think you could actually do so much if you know how reality TV works to build up and make people pull for these people.
Our previous organization actually did it. They hired people who travel with us to the tournaments. And I think it's really good and important.
Right. And then lastly, I just have two things to say. Which is one, Yalu Blue Jenshina, Yalu Blue Podshushviat. Podshushviat. There you go. I basically said I love women and I love jokes.
Yeah.
And on that note,
no, you know what you said? Sorry, you know what you said? You said I love a woman.
Well, I also do love a woman too, but that could be any woman in this scenario.
All right.
And on that note, thank you to the #1 woman hater, Vilga. Go to the kitchen, make us a sandwich, and everyone else, you can drop your comments down below.